Okay, part two of my commentary. Right, so we start from here. And I don't support Islam, and the UK government are out of order.
Excuse me, John, but also what David is saying reminds me of the fact that I don't think we've mentioned yet that there's also a gag order in Britain about what happened to Tommy. It's come out that he was given this 13-month sentence in prison that could be his death sentence, and that he was tried and sentenced within a couple of hours of being arrested, which is extraordinary. Well, as Bruce Bauer said in Gatestone Institute's speedy injustice. The fact is that the British court then said that nobody could say this, nobody could talk about it. And so there were British publications that had stories up about this already and had to take them down. And Breitbart News was very funny in that they took down their original story and then put redacted everywhere that Tommy Robinson's name appeared and pixelated his photo and put the story back up. So it says redacted, arrested for redacted, outside redacted. And everybody knows what's going on, or if they don't, then they go to find out. But it shows that the British government no longer has any respect for the freedom of speech and is absolutely desperate that the truth about these Muslim rape gangs not get out. That's why they targeted Tommy, and they appear to know how angry the British people will be once the large majority really knows what's been going on.
Yeah, that's just really crazy when you think about it. Not even allowed to talk about it.
I just wanted to point out, because when I started posting about Tommy just a couple days ago in some tweets, because I waited for several days after hearing that he was arrested and hearing the reason that he was arrested. I waited for several days, waiting for stories to come out, right? Because I was like, what? You can't be arrested for standing outside a courthouse reporting on a trial? Reporters do that in the United States every single day.
And I was watching his live Facebook video at the time too.
So there's no way you can be arrested for that sort of thing. So I was waiting for this to come out on the major British news channels. And it just nothing, or it would be something, and then it would get taken down, but no real story as to his arrest and the trial and so on. And then it starts coming out that these things are being quieted down. But when I started just posting some quick tweets, there were actually British critics of Tommy who started defending it, talking about how this could interfere with the trial, and the jury could look up something that he said or something like that. And just think about how ridiculous that is, right? That you can't speak on something, you can't speak on an ongoing trial because it might interfere with the trial. Well, here in the United States, the judge tells people, hey, if you go home, you don't get to you don't look up things about this trial. And if the person's going to disobey that, guess what? They can look at all the reports about these rape gangs, right? So it's not going to be Tommy who's informing them. The reports are already out there when the things happened, when the people were arrested. The information's already out there. And as I've heard, that's all Tommy was. Tommy wasn't giving any new information. He was giving information that was already out there. So the point is that there's no way that Tommy could actually interfere with the trial. If a judge tells you not to look at the end, not to go out and look up on the internet information, a person decides to disregard the judge's order, well, then that person's going to find all that information anyway. It has nothing to do with Tommy. But apart from that, if you're really concerned with that, if you're really concerned this person is going to go home and find a bunch of information, then you would sequester the jury, right? You would say, the jury, you're on a kind of house arrest here, or something like that, where you don't get access to a computer or something like that. That's the step you would take if you were really concerned about a fair trial. That's the step you would take, so that people's free speech is not interfered with, right? So that you don't stop reporters. So those are the methods you would take. And here in the United States, if a trial is going on, the judge is worried about trial tampering, then he's going to take methods to make sure that the jury isn't getting certain news reports or something like that. It would never cross people's mind shut down the media or to start arresting people in the media. So once again, it looks like things are much worse off in places like Great Britain than here in the U.S. So people,
as I said, Theresa May, the UK PM, is of Satan, and she's sickening to me.
The U.S. when you think things are bad here, could be worse.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a legitimate concern. I think is what happens if the United States, if we don't protect free speech and we allow this kind of stuff to overturn. I mean, do you guys think it's a legit possibility that this could be starting to creep into the United States in some time?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. We're on the way.
Yeah.
There's really nothing preventing it, because in the U.S. we already have the concept of hate crime, and hate crime is based on speech. Hate crime, the very concept of hate crime, if we had a responsible Supreme Court, they would rule it unconstitutional, because hate crime depends on what you say, and that goes against the idea of the freedom of speech. Of course, freedom of speech is not entirely absolute. Direct calls for violence, direct incitement to violence, that kind of thing, that really ought to be illegal, and it is. But the idea that a crime is worse if I call you a name than it is if I just hit you without calling you a name is all opening the door to criminalizing various kinds of speech. And that is the road that Britain is already traveling very far down on.
Hey, John, let me give you another example of how things are in Europe. And what I'm really hoping is that Europe serves as if Europe does keep going this route, I'm hoping that it serves as a kind of warning to the United States, right? That, in other words, kind of better you than us, right? If you guys are going to go down this route and think that shutting down speech and so on is the way to go, then I hope we look at the situation in 10 years and say to ourselves, well, no matter what else happens, we're not going down that route. But just to give you another example, I got a message from YouTube a couple days ago that said that my video about Muhammad is banned in Germany, right? Now, the video is titled, I should probably make another video about this, but the video is titled, Muhammad was a sex addict. And in the video, I post Muslim sources, not Christian sources, not Jewish sources, not atheist sources. I quote multiple passages from Sahih al-Bukhari, their main source on the life of Muhammad, saying that Muhammad would have sex with 9 or 11 women and girls in a single day. And then he's apparently bragging about it because his followers know that he's doing it. And his followers are bragging that he has the sexual strength of 30 men. And I simply point out in the video that we would call a person who's having sex with 9 or 11 women and girls in a single day, we would call him a sex addict. Now, that's everything that I said in the video. And I got a message from YouTube saying that there has been a legal challenge from Germany to that video, and that the YouTube legal team has examined the law and found out that my video is indeed not allowed in Germany. And so they tell me that my video will no longer be allowed to be played in Germany. Now, think about this. This video is not saying kill Muslims. It's not saying anything about Muslim people. It's talking about Muhammad. It's quoting sources on Muhammad, and then it's coming to a kind of conclusion about it. Well, we would call a person like that a sex addict. And if this were anyone else other than Muhammad, it would be perfectly acceptable, right? If someone found out, if a news story broke tomorrow that Donald Trump once had sex with 9 women and girls in a single day, it would be on every single headline in the entire world. It would never cross anyone's mind to say, this isn't allowed to be reported in certain countries. It would never cross anyone's mind. But that is what happens in Germany if you talk about Muhammad. So now notice. So they're not saying, hey, don't speak about Muslims, don't criticize Muslims, don't incite violence against Muslims. They're saying you can no longer legally say something, even if it's entirely true about Muhammad, in the country of Germany. The German government will stop you from saying it in Germany. And so the point is, it's not just the United Kingdom. These things are happening over and over and over again in European countries. And yeah, here in the U.S., we might be the last real free speech zone in the world, given all the problems that we have now.
Yep.
Again, we're still light years ahead of places in Europe when it comes to free speech.
Wood, I think what you need to do is you need to redo the video specifically for the German audience and call it Czechs instead of sex. So call them a Czechs-addict and just do the whole video over again.
hey, I should redo it and do the entire video in German.
Yeah, that's what you should do.
Yep.
So what do you guys think?
Dave Woods, what I would suggest, redo the video. If you do it in German and under a different title, make it then English subtitles. Yep.
That we can do here in the United States to try to preserve this this kind of free speech, or do you think that it's too late, or what are you guys' kind of thoughts on that?
Well, as the great philosopher Yogi Berra said, it ain't over till it's over. And it's not too late. We still are able to speak. Of course, anybody who does speak about these issues honestly is stigmatized and demonized as a racist, bigoted, Islamophobe, and so on, and marginalized as a result. And so we have to fight against that as well. But the main thing that I think we need to be vigilant about right now is to try to keep hate speech ordinances from being passed, whether locally or nationally. It's increasingly common that I hear, speaking on campuses or elsewhere, people saying hate speech is not free speech. And they think of hate speech as some readily, objectively identifiable quantity, and that it consists essentially of anything that dissents from the leftist agenda. So that, as David's video illustrates, if you say things that are unwelcome about Muhammad, even if they're demonstrably true and come from Muslim sources, then that's hate speech and has to be proscribed, has to be rendered illegal. We are very close to this kind of thing in the United States. I would say that a large majority of university students today probably do believe that hate speech is not free speech, does not merit First Amendment protection, and does not have First Amendment protection. And so wherever there are attempts to criminalize or even just to stigmatize so-called hate speech, we need to be energetic in trying to illustrate to people the implications of what they're saying in terms of how they would destroy a free society by creating a protected class that is immune from criticism. Then that protected class can do whatever it wants, and nobody can say anything in response. And that's an authoritarian state, not a free society at all. So the educational effort is the only thing I really can recommend at this point. Like David was saying, that we are really the people who are protecting Muslims and protecting free society at this point, because the alternative to what we're saying, if you cannot say these things, then what John F. Kennedy said so many years ago will be proven abundantly true, that if you make peaceful revolution impossible, you make violent revolution inevitable. And so this is the case here. If we cannot speak the truth about these things, then other people who we do not approve of or endorse will come after us and make it impossible for these lies to continue to be spoken, but do so in a violent manner. I hope that doesn't happen, but that is the road we are traveling on.
Yep.
And I really hope that some people stand up, and I'm not talking about the just ordinary citizens. I'm talking about like reporters, right? I mean, if I were a journalist working for the BBC and I saw a guy get arrested, tried, sentenced, and imprisoned, and then I was told that I would have to shut up about it, I would have to say, no, I'm actually going to report on this, and if you want to lock me up, you can lock me up too. And I have a friend, and after you lock me up and tell the nation no one can report on that, well, he's going to report on it anyway, and then you can lock him up. And eventually people will get sick enough of it. Because the real problem is that these things happen gradually, and not enough people in places like that, in positions where they could do something about it, not enough people do anything about it. But at the end of the day, Westerners really do value their free speech. And so you have to
Absolutely.
kind of take it away gradually, step by step. If you just took it all away, at once, there would be riots in the streets or something like that. So they have to kind of do this step by step, gradually and quietly, and keep things quiet. And I mean, my goodness, if you're a British journalist and you're told to keep quiet about these things, and you do, well, guess what? They're not stopping with Tommy Robinson. Let me put it that way, right?
Yep.
This doesn't. Oh, now we've got Tommy locked up. Now we can stop what we're doing as far as controlling the media. No, this shows them, wow, this is the way to get what we want. And so if you don't take a stand now, you guys are all responsible, right? All these guys are if they stand by and do nothing, they all bear a portion of the responsibility.
Yep.
Down the road that they didn't stand up for free speech when they had the opportunity. So we still have the opportunity right now, and so certainly no time to back down. You're talking all future generations are affected by the decisions we make. Our children are affected by the decisions we make. And if we don't stand up for our rights, then guess what? They're the ones who have fewer rights in the future, right? And so, we've got to stand up.
A lot of people don't realize that protecting free speech is good for everyone, right? And so people that are against Tommy Robinson and all them for utilizing free speech, what do you guys think that they have at stake for themselves?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, so the critics of free speech and for the critics against those who criticize Islam, how does this work against them?
Well, ultimately, they might find that their positions are unpopular or unacceptable to the government, and then they're going to be shut up, and by then there'll be ample precedent for doing so, and so nobody will be there to speak for them. The thing is, John, what I wanted to say was, what David says about it happening gradually is already happening in the United States as well as around the world. If you think back in 1989, I know that's way before your time, but in 1989, Salman Rushdie got the death fatwa put on his head by the Islamic Republic of Iran for his novel, The Satanic Verses, which was based on the Satanic Verses incident in Muhammad's life, where he gave a revelation of the Quran that he changed his mind about later, and then said that he had been inspired by Satan. The Ayatollah Khomeini thought that Rushdie's book was blasphemous and put a price on his head. And he lived in hiding for years. The price is still on his head, although it's been so many years now, apparently he doesn't think he's going to get killed, and he's out in the open. But this is the point, John. At that time, back in 89, everyone was angry with the Ayatollah Khomeini and with Iran and defending the freedom of speech and indignant that anybody would want to kill Rushdie simply for saying something that was critical of Islam. Now, if you fast forward to 2005, 6, 7, when the Muhammad cartoons were published in the Jyllands-Posten Danish newspaper, and then there were riots by Muslims around the world and innocent people were killed, almost every newspaper in the West declined to republish the cartoons and said it was out of respect for Islam and for Muslims. But this was a real significant retreat.
I have no respect for Islam. It's sickening to me. The Quran is sickening.
From the defense of the freedom of speech that everybody took for granted in 1989. And they were saying essentially, we're afraid you're going to kill us, so we will not do anything that you think to be critical of Islam. And then if you fast forward another 10 years to 2015, when Pamela Geller and I put on the Muhammad Art Exhibit and Cartoon Contest in Garland, Texas, and jihadis attacked it and were killed in the parking lot, or else they would have killed all of us. Then, after that, for the next week, on all the shows, everybody was criticizing Pamela Geller. Not the jihadis who tried to kill her, but Pamela for putting on the event. And it seems as if everybody took for granted on CNN and even on Fox, people who should have had more sense, like Laura Ingraham and others, they were taking for granted the idea that if Muslims say they're going to kill you for drawing Muhammad, then you better not draw Muhammad. You have to retreat from your freedom in this regard and give them what they want and submit to this violent intimidation. And so people have already internalized in the space between Rushdie and Geller, 1989 to 2015, They've internalized the idea. Many Americans, even many influential Americans, like Bill O'Reilly and Laura Ingraham, they have accepted the idea that you must not offend Islam, and you just don't do something that Muslims find offensive. It's your fault if Muslims are violent as a result of that.
Yeah, David, did you want to add anything to that, or no?
No, it's and this goes back to what Robert was saying earlier, that when you say, hey, Muslims are going to kill you over this cartoon, therefore don't post the cartoon, you've just given them the encouragement that they need, right? That doesn't reduce the violence. That encourages the violence. The message that sends to jihadis worldwide is you can get your way, right? If you want to stop people from criticizing Muhammad, violence is the path. It's not reasoning with them about whether they should be doing this or whether it's a good thing to do. It's killing people over it, and that's the path. And it's not just on the cartoons. The message that sends is, if you ultimately want your way in the West, guess what? They'll just back down from violence. So just be as violent as possible, and they'll back down. They as much as they may be concerned about their rights, they're not concerned about them to the point where they're willing to die for them. Unlike so many other Americans and Westerners down through history who were willing to die for them, now they're too comfortable. And if you start threatening them and intimidating them, they'll back down. And so when reporters and politicians and Hollywood send that as one massive message to the Islamic world, hey, if you want us to stop talking about Muhammad, if you want to control the entire population of the West, just be as violent as possible. To assume that is going to reduce violence in the world is beyond idiotic. So that would be my perspective.
Gotcha. And a couple more questions. And before we go, just everybody that's watching live right now, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Also subscribe to Act 17 Apologetics and Jihad Watch for more. And also share this video with on your feed, your social media accounts, so that way more people can see it. What do you guys think about the role for moderate Muslims? So what would you advise for moderate Muslims? Do you think that they should stand with us in this, or should they, defend the extremists or kind of the censoring, or what do you guys think?
Well, John, it really depends on what you mean by moderate Muslims. There is a fictional moderate Muslim that the establishment media assumes exists, and that is a Muslim who believes in peace and brotherhood as taught by the authentic understanding of the Quran. Now, the authentic understanding of the Quran does not actually teach peace or brotherhood or the equality of rights of all people before the law. There are a lot of Muslims who don't pay attention to what the Quran really does teach, and so you could call them moderate Muslims because they're never going to wage jihad, but that doesn't mean that they have any theological leg to stand on within Islam. And then there are moderate Muslims who are deceivers, who say that Islam really doesn't teach any violence, Islam really teaches peace, and properly understood, and they're living it out. There are plenty of those making lots of money speaking to infidel audiences that are very anxious to be reassured and to be fooled, and who don't know enough about the subject to respond to what is happening. But a Muslim who genuinely rejects the teachings of warfare and subjugation and sex slavery and all the rest of it that's in the Quran and in the Sunnah ought to be standing with us, certainly, and standing with Tommy Robinson as well in trying to call attention to these matters so as to effect genuine reform. But I couldn't name a single person who is actually like that in the world today.
Yeah, as far as peaceful Muslims, so the Muslim you would meet on your college campus who has no thoughts of waging jihad or something like that. The disturbing trend I find is that they tend to be upset about the wrong things, right? In other words, you can take your average peaceful Muslim who doesn't want to wage jihad, doesn't like ISIS, doesn't approve of ISIS, doesn't approve of terrorist attacks. For some reason, when I'm talking to them, I still find out that they get massively more upset that there's a cartoon contest or something like that. Then they do about a terrorist attack. So I say, hey, what do you think about that terrorist attack? Oh yeah, that's bad. That's that's some bad stuff there. I condemn that. And I say, okay, what do you think about the Israel situation? Oh my goodness! And then they flip out, right? And so it's you should. I mean, I'm thinking from a Christian perspective, right? If someone was drawing an offensive picture about Jesus on one corner, and down the other corner there was a Christian out murdering people in the name of Jesus, I would be way more upset about the Christian murdering people in the name of Jesus.
Exactly.
I would be much more upset about that person than I am about the other person who's drawing a mean picture. So even with moderate Muslims, their perspectives and what really bothers them seems to be massively skewed. Like there's a problem with the moral compass. Now, to be clear, there, I'm not questioning whether they really condemn terrorism. So I've known lots of Muslims. I've known lots of Muslims who left Islam, and so I have no doubt about what their true positions were as a Muslim. Like when Nabil left, and when Nabil became a Christian, he didn't say, I was trying to kill you the entire time, David. I was planning to kill you. No, he sincerely believed what he was telling me about Islam being peaceful. But as far as where they should be standing, guess what? If you are a genuinely peaceful Muslim who doesn't believe in Muhammad's command to fight unbelievers until they say there's no God but Allah, of course you need to be standing on our side, because you've seen what happens in areas of the world where the people who do take Muhammad's command to violently subjugate unbelievers take over an area. They're out there killing the so-called moderate Muslims in massive numbers, right? Why? Because they regard you as apostates or heretics, right? If you're so far away from basic, if you're far enough away from basic Islamic teachings, they'll consider you apostates. Even if you have a slight deviation from something that Muhammad said, they'll regard you as a heretic, and they'll kill you too. So, peaceful Muslims who don't want to kill people, they need to understand that the worst you have to fear from people like me is that we're going to criticize your prophet, right? We're going to criticize your ideology. Now, if you can't deal with that, then I would question whether you're really moderate. If you cannot deal with that, but if you can deal with that, if you can deal with that sort of thing, then you should be on our side, because there are people in this world who are not going to tolerate any difference of opinion from you. I can tolerate difference of opinion, even from Muslims. There are people in the Muslim community who will not tolerate difference of opinion, even from other people who are Muslims. They will kill them. So people need to get some perspective on these issues.
Right. That'll be end of part 2. Okay. From this point, 55 minutes, 58 seconds, will be start from part 3.